had a busy veto session where not as much got done, and so we're headed back down to Springfield in less than 2 weeks. I think it's gonna be an incredibly busy session again. I don't think it'll be as many like huge bills like the capital bill, the casino bill, those types of things. I think now you're gonna see a lot more member initiatives. I think the last session was very heavy on the administration, what the administration wanted to accomplish early on, the governor. I think they got a lot done. I think this session feels as though there'll be a lot more bills pushed, by individual members, and we'll see, where those go. So, are there any questions that I can answer for you, William, or Alejandro? Anyone?
How long are terms?
Terms of 2 years. Yeah. So, sworn in January of 2019, and it lasts until January of 2021. So we had a session January, essentially through the end of May, maybe the first day of June in 2019. The summer is pretty much off, and some of the fall. Then you go back down for a veto session in November. I anticipate that'll be the same thing in 2020, January to the end of May, maybe June if we don't wrap up in May, and then a veto session in November again.
So this might be like a dumb question, but so I'm just trying to understand what the difference between a rep and a senator.
That's not a dumb question at all. So think about it just like in any regards like the United States, right?
Right.
You have 3 branches of government just in general. One is the judicial branch, judges, black robes. That's pretty easy. Then the executive branch, whether it's the governor at the state or the president at the federal level. And then you have 2 houses. So in the state of Illinois, you have 118 state reps and 59 senators.
Right.
So 2 reps per senator.
Okay.
Right? And so, both can introduce legislation and serve very similar functions, but just in different chambers of different houses. And each bill that becomes law has to make it through both chambers anyway. So whether I introduce it or your state senator introduces it, it comes back to the other person anyway to try to usher it through their respective house. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
How's Madigan looking out there?
I don't know that I exactly understand the question, but what do you mean more specifically?
Well, he's in the news at times.
I've been in the news at times myself, so.
I don't know if we want to scratch that, but yeah, I know we don't really.
Maybe you're talking about in the social media, but I'm talking about in the mainstream media. I see Madigan, Fox had a party for Madigan, and this is political right now. I don't know if you're familiar with that ad that they have.
I haven't seen the political ad, no. But I mean, I've definitely seen a lot of coverage about the House in general. There have been
and its connection with Burke, its connection with, the FBI is looking at him intense. It's an intense investigation on Madigan. I don't know if it came from Comey prior to his him resigning or whatever had happened to his job. What are we hearing about that? I mean, that's your boss. That's your chief.
My boss is the residents of the 25th district. But I hear what you're saying. He's the Speaker of the House. I think so from an administrative perspective, certainly, we work together, I guess, in that regard. But I'm not close enough with, quite honestly, anybody down that way that I get the tea more so than anybody else in the news would. I watch the news, I read the blogs and things like that, the same, but I don't think I know any more than the general public in that regard.
So there's no big wave on him. He's put where he's going to be for years to come. I think
there's a big wave in general that things in Springfield need to change. I think that's what we're seeing.
Okay.
And I think that I've seen the spotlight on several individuals. But what I'll say is I think the governor made this point as well. The culture in general in Springfield is something that I think people are looking to say this needs to change. We're seeing a lot of things in the news now that may have happened years ago, and we don't want those things going forward. And so I'd imagine when we get to Springfield, we'll start to see some things that kind of reactionary, I think, in Springfield. I think we'll start to see some
Like you
changes.
said, this is your first
Sure.
term. You know, when you're a newcomer, so you can put say, hey, you know what, the direction is not the way I would like to see it go, and as you're presenting it right now. Your future may say, all the newcomers may say the same thing that you do. You know, like, what's her name, Cortez, and she's a newcomer in the U.S. Congress.
AOC?
AOC, yeah, you know, and she's swinging everything, and she's got a lot of feet on the ground.
Sure.
You know, so, I don't know if they can knock her out now, we'll see about that.
Sure.
You know, with, Amazon, maybe somebody may be supported by them, we might see that, but I mean, she's a newcomer, she wants things her way, and she's got somebody talking to her, whoever it is. Now, I don't think that, somebody is, when we get in a position as you are in your position, they're not gonna be hammering you because you're new and you're not, are you accepting everything that's going on like you just spoke? Things must change.
Sure.
In Illinois. You know, and, this recent, I'm not a marijuana smoker, you know, and I know some people that are happy about it, but there's also medical, medicine is saying that may have been a big mistake. So how do you feel about medical marijuana and recreational marijuana?
I mean, medical has been around for some
Right.
time. I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't say that this, you know, I don't know the science any better than they would. I presume.
I mean, but you should start having an interest in what the doctors say. Some of them may say it's not good for the young people, you know? So,
Sure. I mean, I think on the medical side, I would certainly rely on doctors who are subject matter experts. I wouldn't interject myself in that. I think that there's been enough at that level that you see medical in plenty of states, more so than you see recreational. On the recreational side, I personally don't have any issue with adults who want to purchase and consume cannabis. I don't. Where my issue is, and I've been very clear about this, is that I think that the social equity piece is absolutely missing. No matter how much we say this is the most progressive in the nation, it may be, but that doesn't mean that we're where we need to be. I think we have a long way to go. And so my concern is that when a bill is run and primarily sold to black and brown individuals as a criminal justice reform bill, then you have black and brown people taking an eye out the ball, which is the fact that this is actually a money bill. This is a generational wealth bill. And when everybody thought that it was so focused on criminal justice reform, that's how you end up in a situation where there's this miscommunication, it seems, and now all of a sudden people are surprised that there are no licenses, you know, currently in the hands of black and brown individuals. You can throw women in there as well. We're talking about, you know, some of these issues. And so that for me right now is the primary issue. It's the reason why I introduced the bill, you know, saying, hey, look, if someone was a juvenile and had a cannabis-related offense, automatically expunge it. If we're not going to do criminal justice reform for anybody else, let's at least do it for children who made mistakes as children. So that stuff doesn't follow them into adulthood. And I mean, that may not be the answer that you're looking for, but that's really where my focus is right now as it relates to cannabis. I mean, we're not going to, the bill is out there, it's legalized, you know. The only thing we can do now, I think, is try to make sure that just like everybody has access to go to a dispensary and purchase, that everybody has the ability to own a dispensary just the same, or cultivation, or transportation as well.
well, the number is limited in the entire state, is that correct?
Pardon?
The number of dispensaries is limited, or can you expand on those in the future? How does that work?
I mean, it's a 610-page bill, but yes, generally, the number of dispensaries and all the licenses are limited. There's not an unlimited number of licenses.
And that's gonna remain for, as long as that bill is, as long as the state allows it to happen, is it gonna stay that way? Does Congress, the state Congress have to act on it to move, to increase or decrease or?
At this point, because it's become law, I would think any changes would have to go through the legislative process, yes. I mean, there'll be rules and regs related to what's already in the bill, but to actually go out and make substantive changes to the bill, which is now law, then it has to go through the legislative process.
As it stands, there's going to be, I think, 185 licenses passed out or handed out by the state sometime this summer. There's 2 more licenses that are available under medical marijuana that they can start giving recreational pot a month after they open. One in Hyde Park Township, which we're in right now. And the governor's perspective on this is that they have the social justice, social equity piece written into the process for the applications for those 185 additional licenses and that kind of thing. But do you think that there could be a legislative fix to get the legalization as it's ongoing right now more to a position that you want to see it in? I'm curious at what in Curtis Tarver's mind, what would be equitable and legalization that would address a criminal justice issue?
Well, on the criminal justice side, I think what's equitable is if you allow people to sell unlimited quantities of marijuana, then individuals who were arrested, jailed, imprisoned, right? Those are 3 separate things. Should also have an opportunity to have their records expunged beyond 30 grams or less.
That's what it is right now.
My understanding is automatic expunges 30 grams or less.
Okay.
Above that, you can go through the expungement process. Here's what may shock you. People who, are peddling not huge amounts of marijuana, probably don't have access to attorneys and things like that to go through the expungement process. Right. Or we heard about a lot more of them going through that process January 1st, 2020. There's been no press about it. I've not heard anything about this wave of people who had 35 grams or 100 grams.
Pritzker's thing on New Year's Day was to get like 10,000 commutations or something like that, right?
Right. Yeah. That's great. I mean, those are pardons by the government. Those are not individuals who have gone through a process and had a judge,
And you're saying it's only automatic to 30 grams, which is like an eighth, right?
That's my understanding of what the automatic expungement is. 30
and
grams
it's
or less.
going back in time too, and it's taking a process. It's not going to happen overnight.
And if I'm not mistaken, and there may have been change, I'll look again, but the way it was originally drafted was 30 grams or less and no other offense.
Why wasn't this fixed? Well, I hate to say why, ifs and thoughts, but why wasn't this done, to make it bigger than 30 grams last year when you all were in session and doing it and that kind of thing?
I'll say 2 things. One is it's the administration's initiative, so I can't, speak on their behalf. Based on what, my interaction and my understanding of the process, there's so many people weighing in, and that's probably a bad pun, but there's so many people weighing in.
I wouldn't have thought
and trying to, effectuate, their purposes, that you have to give something up to get something with it, right? I mean, I think that, my understanding, and I could be misreading the bill, when you say that, part of being a social equity applicant, you get points for having a diversity plan.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that I've read, and I could be wrong again, so don't misquote me for saying that this is true. But I don't remember seeing anything that says if you don't follow through with that plan, then this is what will happen.
Yeah, because one of the components, there's 3 components for social equity. One's living in an area that had a higher number of arrests. The other one is, I think, if you have an arrest record. And the third is just if you make a plan to hire, X percentage of people from that area too. I didn't know if there was any kind of way to enforce that though.
Well, you're not going to take somebody's license away because they didn't enforce the diversity plan. So if they don't, then what do you do?
But what do you want to do legislatively about it though? How can this be fixed? And are you going to introduce the bills for it?
I mean, I think if we could have done things legislatively, then they might have been done already. I don't think there's an appetite to really do very much at this point.
That must be disappointing.
So for instance, you know, I look at it like this, and this is a proposal that I made. It wasn't a legislative proposal. It was, we're having meetings, and these are things that can be done. If you're talking about social equity applicants, instead of just saying hire individuals, right? You know, we passed $15 minimum wage, but that ramps up over several years. Why not give people points for hiring individuals from those communities and pay them $15 an hour right now? And sure, it doesn't matter as much in Chicago, because minimum wage is already 14, going to 15 and so on. But it may matter somewhere else, where the minimum wage will be whatever it is now and ramping up to $15 an hour, right? You know, maybe law enforcement needs less than an 8% premium off the top, right? Without any justification for what they're gonna use the funds for, right? There's nothing that I saw that said, hey, we need 8% because there's a $100 million market, we need $8 million for this, or $1 billion market, we need $80 million for that. That wasn't a conversation, right? It was law enforcement opposes the bill, but if it passes, they want 8% and they get 8%. So there's no limit to what I would personally change. I just don't think that the bill or the law as it stands is where we need to be. And sure, we can tout that we're the first in the nation to, you know, get across the finish line with, you know, legislatively. It's a talking point.
But you don't think that there's appetite in the legislature, the General Assembly, to further refine the legalization in this coming session in the springtime?
I'll tell you what a basic litmus test is to me. If we can pass something as simple as, if you were a juvenile and had an offense.
That's your bill.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, somebody else could have run, I would say the same thing. If we can pass something that says, if you were a juvenile, made a mistake, and had some kind of a cannabis-related offense, we're gonna automatically expunge that, then I think there's an appetite to actually do something that effectuates change. You know, am I optimistic? I'm hopeful.
Thank you, sir.
Now, what about the banking of the federal banking laws?
So,
What are they doing? How are they? Like this one, they were just robbed somewhere in, I'm not sure the address.
The dispensary of North?
Dispensary, Northside dispensary was just robbed. They have a lot of cash in here. The banks are not helping them out because of the federal law.
yeah, so a couple things on that. One, Brett Buckner, who is in the 26th district, has a bill, I believe, related to Illinois and banking for cannabis entities, or entities in the business of cannabis. It's still legal at the federal level, so I don't think you're gonna see anything change there anytime soon. As far as the dispensary up north, so I'm not a president and I don't know very much about it. The last thing that I read, that it seemed like it was some kind of an inside job, is what I read in the paper.
Right.
So I don't know if that's like a.
They had a card to get inside the door.
Sure, yes. I don't know if that's going to be like a ongoing issue at other places, but I definitely did read about that. And I mean, and it is of concern if you can't put money in the bank, you know, where it goes. I mean, there was concern, individuals mentioned it sometimes, you know, is this an opportunity for people to essentially, you know, launder money and things like that, or wash money essentially, because the money can't go into the bank. So I mean, there are a lot of issues related to this. And one thing I think that, you know, has been made clear to us in the legislature is that this is something that there's going to be legislation for this, I mean, about this for a long period of time. You know, the same way that we still have legislation related to tobacco, right? I'm sure when, you know, people started talking about tobacco in several legislatures years ago, nobody thought about vaping and things like that, right? It just wasn't a concept. And now here it is, and now we're dealing with those issues as well.
Do you support CAM's bill?
Who's
CAM's?
You know, am I on the bill? I have to look. In general, from what Cam told me about the bill, it makes sense. I can't say, I don't know that I've seen this since it's been introduced. I know I've seen drafts.
I've read it. It would, basically just create state chartered banks for the sake of the marijuana industry and only the marijuana industry, both for growers and distributors.
I mean, it seems like a reasonable idea to me, you know? Again, the devil's in the details as far as the rules and regs and how we do that. I mean, for me, since I'm on my soapbox, that'd be another opportunity. You know, there's been a couple of black-owned banks in the state, right? I mean, that's another opportunity if we're, you know, if the state's providing charters for banks, that we maybe find some more participation for Black and brown individuals, right, who can pull resources, whatever, who may not necessarily have expertise in the cannabis business, but know banking and want to be involved in that aspect.
I hate to take a time away from your
Oh.
constituents, but I am curious because we interviewed Senator Peters about this the other day, who's all of your senators as well.
Yeah, we know.
But you're talking about Black and brown people. He was talking about how so many of his constituents, deal because they have no other ways of making money, and they're afraid. He wants to provide for them, for people who are going to lose their livelihood through legalization right now. Have you ever thought about that, or what the state could be doing for people who are caught up now in this legalization and this, green wave bonanza, with money and that kind of thing, that they're going to lose their income another way?
I'll tell you candidly, I don't think that a lot of individuals who are selling cannabis are going to lose a ton of business.
Yeah, probably not. It's
I just don't think that's the case.
I don't think so either.
The county just added a 3% tax, so we're talking about now a 41% tax.
yeah.
The average purchase, I think the day one was like $41. I think most people walking out of those dispensaries won't tell you they're getting a lot for $41. So I would say, as much as I like Rob, I don't share that same concern that these individuals are going to all of a sudden lose their livelihood. Now, the unfortunate part about it is, if for some reason they get caught, they're going to lose their livelihood.
Sure.
There's no doubt about that. And so, we just have to find a way to bring people, it feels a lot like we're bringing individuals who have been consuming cannabis for a long period of time into the light, so to speak, right? So there's no shame. People don't have to feel bad about it. You can go do things legally. But the folks who have been selling, who've been in the shadows and so, and so on, are still relegated to be in that space because they cannot oftentimes participate in the legal market. And that's disheartening. There's a guy I read about in Forbes. I don't have his name in front of me, but a Russian guy who was already rich. I think he's worth $77 million at the time. But in 2012, a friend convinced him to come into the medical market in the States, and he did. And his stake is now worth $950 million. So he became a billionaire, pretty much literally, based on the medical market, right? And I'm not saying I know a lot of people with $77 million, or even $7.7 million, or $777,000, whatever, right? But there are some folks who can put together some numbers that maybe you can go from, 5 figures to 6 to 7. I think those are opportunities that we're really missing here. But the jury's still out. We'll see what happens with the social equity program. We'll see what happens when these licenses come, over the summer. I could be wrong. I would be elated for the first time in my life to be wrong.
You've never been happy before?
We're being wrong now.
Oh, they're wrong.
Ain't wrong, right?
Yeah, nobody wants to be wrong.
Alejandra, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. She had a question.
No, I see a jotting down notes. I just don't know if you had any questions.
No, I'm
You
just,
good?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, my question is, I know you mentioned you had some challenges that you had to deal with. It's been, like you say, only a year. Were you able, and you have a great newsletter. You do keep, to me, the community pretty much aware of what you're doing.
Try, thank you.
Yeah.
That's all Kyra, by the way.
Yes, thank you. There she go right there. But just to bring some people who not getting the newsletter or not on Facebook or whatever, what are some of the things you were able to kind of push, or when your next term come in, what you'd like to push?
So criminal justice reform is something that's going to always be important to me because it's very personal to me. Just from individuals I grew up with, people that I still know. And the importance is, ensuring that people have a second chance, because I'm just a proponent of everybody deserves a second chance in some capacity, right? So criminal justice reform is always going to be important. Education is always going to be important. I make no secret about the fact that my daughter goes to a very good selective enrollment school, and I see the discrepancies between that school and the school that is 2 blocks down the street, which is her neighborhood school. And that's concerning for me. The fact that I knew, before she was born, that she would never go to school in her neighborhood is a problem. But she was born to 2 lawyers, so she's always going to get a good education. That's not everybody's, opportunity. So that's important to me. I'm a lawyer, so I do all civil law. So looking at issues that, like there was a bill last year that a couple of bills. So one, now prevents discrimination on the basis of being LGBTQ. I'm missing something, I'm sure.
You can add about a million other letters.
Yeah, but
We get you.
but the bottom line is, up until January 1st, that could be a legitimate reason. Not legitimate like it should be, but a reason that would not cause anybody any issues for striking somebody from the jury, right? And we're talking about the jury of your peers, right? I mean, that's a reason. I would tell you I've been practicing law almost 15 years. It never even dawned on me, because it's just so silly to me that you could just, that could be a basis for discriminating against somebody, and it would not have been an issue, right? I believe, I have to look again, but I'm almost positive there was a bill that said you cannot use someone's documentation status against them, like when you're talking about evictions and things like that, right? So I mean, there's just the bills out there that I think, as it relates to civil law, that we have to keep pushing the ball forward, quite honestly.
You say criminal justice, education, and civil rights, and you've been vocal about those issues through your whole political career, but are there any things going on in this coming legislative section on these three issues that you plan to address, or that you know that the House or the Senate is going to address?
I know Rob has been really focused on, Senator Peters, excuse me, he's been very focused on ending the cash bail system.
You talked to us about
Yeah,
that.
and we talked about that last week. I haven't seen the actual bill.
I don't know, it's been introduced. You need that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a draft out there, but I haven't seen it. So I think that's something that, we're gonna look at. I think that'll make it through at least one house to the other.
You support
and see what happens. I need to see the actual bill, so that'll be a big thing. Not surprised, I'm going to push my bill about automatic expungements for juveniles convicted of cannabis-related offenses. On the education side, I think Cam's bill, we'll see what two things. One, I think you'll see the bill for a local elected school board revive.
Is that going to go anywhere?
Well, I think it made it to the House. I think, the Senate is where things got kind of held up. So it's probably a better question for Senator Peters, because he would have been more involved in that aspect. But I think there's a real push. People want to see it. So, I think that'll get some traction. What else as far as education? I think Cam has a good bill that essentially looks at how funds are dispersed through CPS, and wants to see that mirror the funding formula for the state, so the schools that are most in need get those resources. And given the makeup of both his district and my district, I think it makes a ton of sense, quite honestly. Because again, I look at even the public schools in Hyde Park look a lot different than the public schools in South Chicago, which look different than South Shore. And each of those neighborhoods and communities have individual needs that should be addressed. If I were waving a magic wand, we would put more money into education, quite honestly. I mean, if you look at it, I think the last time I looked, it was something like 15.8% of everyone in the state is a child between kindergarten and 12th grade at a public school. So to continue to underfund schools, I think is just not sustainable. It's great that we kick another $350 million into the funding formula every year for 10 years. But to me, that means once that $3.5 billion comes into the system, that was what was needed in year one, and we're now in year 10. So, I mean, it's better than where we were, but certainly, I'd like to see us get to a better place.
You're on the elementary school committee for appropriations.
K through 12.
Are you going to be watching that? I mean, you'll be in when the, well, I don't actually know. I don't watch committee meetings in Springfield very much. I mean, is it work like Congress? I mean, I doubt your constituents have either, but I mean, do you guys talk to experts about this? I mean, how does the sausage get made in Springfield? Because in Chicago, it's just like the mayor says, this is what we're going to do, and then everyone says, okay, and that's how it goes. But I mean, is it more deliberative than that? Or?
I think a lot of people believe that's the way things go at the city. I used to work in the government affairs at the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that goes on prior to things hitting committees.
Well, that's what I see.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's the same thing at the state level as well. There's a lot of conversations that go on before things actually get to a committee. And certainly, what ends up happening inevitably at the committee level is there's that one question or two questions somebody ever thought of, and now it's
So you do find you will play an active role in how these concerns are crafted and how it's addressed on the
I play an
committees?
active role in every committee that I'm on. I do.
I'll try to find a way.
Yeah, I mean, and
Who was asking?
I think if you're looking for a committee to really, I would say the committee where I think you find the most, if you want to call it fireworks, is probably for my committees, the Civil Judiciary Committee. I mean,
I'll watch it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Interesting.
Sorry again.
The gentleman here, he's not a constituent.
Do you live in the district?
Bridgeport. I work for the Hyde Park Herald.
Okay, so then you're being recorded on our.
Well, he's okay. He's recording too. Yes, it's there.
And he asked them some good
Next
questions.
question.
So what bills have you sponsored?
Oh, that's a good question. I would have to look at the list.
You want it?
Sure.
Like I said, you've been very in.
Thanks. Let's see. You want ones that are sponsored that became law? Let's see. I would say the most the bill that I'm most proud of that I sponsored is a bill that makes it a civil rights violation to discriminate against someone on the basis of having been arrested, as it relates to housing. So, for instance, if you're going to rent an apartment and you've been arrested, this gives you a cause of action if you're discriminated against on that basis. Or if you're going to get a loan in housing, right? This allows for you to go to the Department of Human Rights and say, I've been discriminated against based on the fact that I've been arrested. And I can't tell you this is true for sure, but the last number that I heard is that it affects about 5 million people in the state of Illinois. Yeah. So, with it being a little over 12 million people, I think it's pretty significant.
And that passed?
That passed. That is a public act as of January 2020. Yep. And then there's a list of things that I cheat code or co-sponsored as well, but that list literally is like 50 or 60 bills, so I won't bore you with all of that. But what I will do is before we leave, I'll show you on Andy's computer how to go online and just pull it up, and you can see it for your state senator as well. And
The
cool
website's
thing,
from like '96, but
It
it's
is.
real easy to use.
but the cool thing also is if you go to, let's say, my name, then it'll give the associated senator. So you can click on that person and see everything they have as well, or vice versa. So you'll be able to find out a lot about what we've done or not done very easily.
But do you have it on your website too?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I should know this.
I'm sorry, I'm like on quiz. It's
I don't know. I should know
Because
this.
if I said that may be a nice way, because I know you do.
If it's not, then we can do that. Sure.
Yeah, right.
I swear I saw it somewhere.
I
No,
thought
I'm
I
saying,
saw it
I
on
saw
his
it- I
website
saw it
too.
somewhere. I just don't
I'm
remember where I
thinking
saw
it's
it.
on your website, but I
Or
could
maybe
be
it's a link
wrong.
from the website.
Yeah.
What surprised you the most in the last year about being an elected official? What have you learned?
No, I learned a lot.
I
I really
bet.
have. I mean, one of the things I think that's been beneficial for me is outside of knocking on people's doors and showing up to events when you want their vote, you'd be amazed at how appreciative people are if you show up to their door when you're not asking for their vote. And it seems like common sense, right? Like people want to see you when you don't want anything from them,
Oh, yeah.
right? But the reception that you get when you're like, I'm actually just knocking on the door just because I want to hear your issues,
Right.
So that's been one thing. I would say I've learned that I learned this in practice in law, but certainly now that I'm in office, when people bring an issue to you, it's the most important issue in their life, right?
Yep.
And I learned that practice law specifically because I'm on the plaintiff side, right? And we represent individuals who've been injured and so on. And so that's obviously the most important thing to them. But when you knock on somebody's door and they tell you, hey, look, this tree is bothering like the plumbing in my house. It has nothing to do with the state, but it's the most important thing to them. You realize very quickly the biggest lesson, which is that various levels of government have to work together and have to communicate. It has to happen.
Right, because people don't understand how the system works to begin with.
And you know what? I think if you asked me a year and maybe 10 days ago, I would say something different. I don't know that people should have to understand. I mean, I think before it's like, hey, you just know this, that, and the other. No, I don't think you should. What you know is that you have elected officials that should be working together, pulling on the same side of the road, not saying you're going to agree on every single issue, but agreeing that working together makes things better for the entire community. And I think there just has to be more communication at varying levels of government. And we're seeing it right now, right? I mean, this issue on the lakefront with the erosion and flooding, all these things. And to be honest, a lot of what it seems is that every level of government is pointing to the other person saying, well, this is your issue, right? As opposed to, I think we're getting there now, but I think, initially it was everybody kind of pointing at each other saying, this is not my role.
But I saw that you started like a task force.
Yes.
For that, like, what's the status of the task force?
So we're gonna do a couple things. One, and Kyra just talked about this, we're gonna draft a resolution urging the governor and obviously Congress as well to look at the issue and then fund, at least this Army Corps of Engineers study, which I think they said was a couple $100,000. So I just feel like it's more than that.
Oh yeah.
The study?
It's just a study.
Yeah. Sorry.
No. What we need done is
way more than that.
$300,000 or something.
Yeah, somewhere in that range. I mean, I'm looking at articles from 2000 or so when there was money supposed to go to Promontory Point for similar issues. I think it was like $20 million that just, for whatever reason hasn't.
It was like a hodgepodge of funding for different areas along the lakefront, from the feds through the Army Corps of Engineers, and I think that the city was going to do. And one of the two didn't hold up their end of the bargain for it, and we're seeing what's happening.
Exactly. We're seeing what's happening. And so, we have people out every single day getting petitions signed. You saw, Kyra's over here twisting arms, asking for petitions. But because we want people to understand it's not just something like that I think is important, although I do think it's important. I mean, these are constituents of all of ours who are saying, hey, this is important to me, and we want to see something done. So we're doing that. We're getting petitions signed. We are, what am I missing, Kyra? Because you've been kind of quarterbacking this.
Working with all levels of government, continue to get petitions signed.
One of the things I want to look at, and I don't know the answer to this, but I'm certainly trying to ask the question, is there any opportunity with like capital bill funds or anything to at least try to get the study done? So I feel like once there's a study, right, it's going to tell us what we need. And then it's easy to go chase money and funding once we know exactly what we need, as opposed to being something that's more anecdotal. Hey, there's water approaching. Hey, the lakefront is eroding. We all know those things. But,
So this is what I'm trying to understand. Like they need, you said like 100,000 to do a study of what, to say what we already know is pretty much happening, or a study to say what could be potential fixes and how much it's going to cost. Like,
I think all of the above.
okay, so I have an issue with that. Well, I'm just saying I have other issues with the Army Corps of Engineers, but that's like part of the issues. Is like they always want to do these studies. I'm like, but you've known these have been issues forever and a day, and now you want to do a study? Like, it's kind of past that point.
In my former life, I used to represent a wastewater engineering company, right? It was interesting, but I mean, I can think of engineers there who could probably do a study and tell us generally what we need. I mean, my understanding is that the Army Corps of Engineers has to do something as it relates to ultimately obtaining funding. But yes, I think that whatever the study is going to tell us what we see already, but in more painstaking detail. And I think it will propose some solutions as well that are beyond my non-engineering line.
I'll be nice.
Anything else? Alejandra?
I mean, I'm just here because, like...
I'm just here so I don't get fined?
No. No, I feel like the only time I ever hear of you is people talking shit because you're always in Hyde Park. And so I came to figure out if that was... Like, I came to just, one, know more about my rep.
Sure.
But also, like, figure out why it's taken, like, you a year to finally come down here. And, yeah.
So I think that is semi-fair. I didn't go very many places between January and June because I was in Springfield. So that's the first part of it. The second part is that I've actually been here in the 10th Ward more than maybe you've noticed, and I've been to El Valor specifically. I know more than you may have noticed. I think if you talk to the folks here, they'll tell you I've been involved, and that I was very instrumental in helping to secure funds for El Valor to the tune of, I think, somewhere north of $600,000. And that's not something that,
Right.
I just do from my little fiefdom in Hyde Park. And I'm not taking offense to what you're saying. I'm happy to come to the 10th Ward as often as you all, feel like you need to see me. And I learned today that it seems to be better for parents to come during the day than it is in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
So that works for me. I'll be here, during the day more often. But I don't know that it's taken me a year to come to the 10th Ward.
He's been around.
That's
part of
it. You were here before, thank you very much, and we have a big group. And today is, normally we have our meetings during the day and we have great participation from parents. But, we want to try this time, but he was here before and he has been supporting us. And he answered a lot of questions, the parents have.
Yeah, and I continue to do the same thing. So I don't think I'm taking offense. I think, pardon?
Jane Adams too.
Yeah, I went to schools in this area as well. I can talk about some of the things the office is trying to do. Like, for instance, we hired an intern who speaks Spanish, so that even if you are not in Hyde Park and you call the office, someone can answer the phone and answer your questions, right? Someone who's working so that we can translate our flyers and things like that in Spanish and stuff as well. Because you may know this about the district, but my district is as diverse as it is segregated, right? So, the northern end is kind of a hodgepodge. South Shore is overwhelmingly black. I get into the 10th Ward and there's a decent mix, but out of all of my brown population, it's all in the 10th Ward for the most part.
You're
and
at
so,
7th Ward Baptist Church out there.
yeah, the southern end of the 7th Ward. You're right.
I see out there, the mayor and Greg.
Yeah. So but by all means, hold me accountable and tell others. Call the office and tell me when to be here. That's another thing that would be extremely helpful, just so that you know. If people tell us what's going on down this way, and want me to be present, if I'm not in Springfield and I have a prior obligation, I'm happy to. Happy to. That is the entire purpose of saying, hey, look, let me come this way, and have these conversations.
Right.
Because we have an opportunity to learn when we do that. So thank you. Anything else?
Any comment on the congressional or presidential races?
Oh, okay, we live. I'm gonna save you now.
Here's my comment. I'm a first-term state rep, trying to be a second-term state rep.
Are you going to Milwaukee this summer?
I plan to. Yeah. Milwaukee in the summer is just fun in general. Not as fun as Chicago, but it is kind of fun. So, cool. Well, thank you all.
Oh, someone just wanted to speak. I don't know that you know him, but they wanted to say hi to you and Cam. Chase Siobhan. I don't know that you know him, but they just want to say hi.
Yeah, Chase is a good guy. So is his brother.
Yes.
Brother's like
Okay.
Do you want to use my computer, Joe?
if you don't mind, thank you.
Oh, before you get off the go, what is your hours, your time? People can talk to you, call, or should I be going that to you?
9 before 30 are times where you can call and come in. We invite you all to come in to say hi to us, and we want to help you.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you guys.
All right,